You feel it before you can name it. A pressureless gravity, a silent vector, tilting your awareness toward an exacting center. Something in you has turned from noise to tone. Your quantum frequency is no longer a scattered broadcast. It's a carrier wave with intent. And reality, which used to drip like rain across your window, now behaves like a polished mirror, waiting for the moment your breath steadies and your inner signature declares what exists. You didn't stumble here by chance. The field doesn't call the unfocused. It waits for coherence. Coherence waits for decision. Decision waits for truth. Today, you are inside the geometry where truth stops negotiating. You have become acoustically precise. The multitudes of you, the fearful you, the performative you, the echoing you fall away, and what remains is a thin, brilliant filament. That filament is your command. In the language of physics, observers alter outcomes because measurement collapses the spread of possibilities into a single event. In the language of prophecy, your name is a bell that alters the wind. In the language of psychology, your nervous system encodes patterns and reality obliges with matching corridors. These are not separate explanations. They are one phenomenon refracted through different minds. The field registers your patterning. The body broadcasts your consent. The world aligns to your permission. You have been practicing even when you thought you were failing. Every time you chose stillness over spectacle, your frequency lost turbulence. Every time you refused the counterfeit urgency of other people's fears, your signal thickened with authority. You learned to feel the difference between the mind's noise and the heart's metronome. That metronome is not sentimental. It is an instrument calibrated to cosmic timing. It knows when a door is real and when it is painted on the wall. Look closely at your recent days. Synchronicities clustered like constellations. Old narratives tried to reassert jurisdiction, then fell apart under the weight of their own incompatibility. The characters who thrive on your uncertainty became uneasy around your presence because your pattern no longer feeds their loops. This is not arrogance, this is resonance hygiene. When a tuning fork vibrates at A440, it doesn't apologize to the out-of-tune string. It invites the string to come clean or go quiet. Your frequency issues commands without words. The command is not a shout. It is a signature, subtle, unyielding, exact. You can feel the edges of it when you inhale, and the body arranges itself around a single intention. The moment you stop bargaining with lesser futures, the field stops offering them. This is the precision you came here to inhabit, to stand in such interior alignment that reality has only one honest response: reflection. There is a cost. You cannot stay diluted. You cannot keep contingency plans for versions of you that are already extinct. The mirror will return exactly what you carry, so you will carry only what you are willing to see multiplied. Breathe. Let the scattered threads return to the loom. Feel the shuttle of attention pass through your chest, left to right, right to left, weaving a fabric that can bear the weight of a new world. Every thought that rises inside you now is amplified. The field has tuned itself to your wavelength, and its sensitivity is surgical. This is the moment most people fear, when there is no longer a distance between signal and consequence. When intention and manifestation become near simultaneous. It feels like exposure, but it is recognition. You have become audible to the architecture of existence. What you used to call coincidence was the field whispering back. It heard every hesitation, every surge of conviction, every whisper of doubt that moved through your nervous system. Now, stripped of interference, your inner signature begins to issue clean commands. Each one travels outward like a frequency pulse, bending probability around the weight of its clarity. Reality is not obeying you, it is agreeing with you. Agreement requires resonance. Resonance requires truth. You are beginning to remember the real nature of causality. It was never a linear procession of events, but an interference pattern, waves, meeting waves. The observer effect is not mystical exaggeration. It is a precise transaction of energy and awareness. When you look upon a possibility with certainty, the uncertainty collapses. When you gaze through the fog of indecision, the fog grows thicker, reflecting your own distortion. The universe does not decide what you deserve, it renders what you declare coherent. Beneath every emotion, there is a frequency signature, a unique geometry of thought, feeling, and cellular vibration. That geometry dictates the world you experience. When you speak, your vocal cords are merely translators. The real language is electromagnetic. It emanates from your heart's oscillation, from the plasma field surrounding every cell, and the quantum field, this infinite lattice of potential, reads that oscillation like code. So when you say, "I am ready," the field measures readiness, not by syllables, but by resonance. It scans your vibration for contradictions, for static, for internal sabotage. If your words and your frequency diverge, nothing happens. But when they merge, when thought and body and breath align, the field responds instantly. This is why ancient mystics spoke in parables of the Word made flesh. It was never about sound, it was about coherence. You can feel coherence in your body now. The subtle tremor beneath your sternum isn't anxiety, it's calibration. The system adjusting to operate at a higher precision. The neurons rewiring to hold sustained focus without collapsing back into noise. You are not manifesting in the old sense. You are remembering the control panel that was always embedded within you. You are programming reality at the source code. Notice how external chaos begins to lose authority. The news, the noise, the frantic choreography of other people's timelines, they no longer dictate your pulse. Your field no longer mirrors their confusion. It mirrors only your chosen signal. This is the first evidence that the quantum field has registered your command. The feedback loop has stabilized. Do not rush this phase. The field is listening closely. Every micro-thought, every unspoken agreement, every silent assumption is a message. And the field, being impartial, will answer every one of them. That is its perfection. It does not punish, it simply reflects. The moment you realize that, you stop negotiating with shadows. You become deliberate. You begin to speak only from frequencies you wish to multiply. And as you do, the invisible starts to behave like the visible. Probability bends. Synchronicity tightens its orbit. The mirror becomes exact, and you finally become audible to creation. You begin to understand that the difference between a wish and a command is load-bearing integrity. A wish leans outward, asking reality for permission. A command stands inward, issuing reality its blueprint. The field doesn't respect desperation, it respects architecture. What you are building now is not an affirmation stack. It is a structural resonance, a lattice of choices that cannot collapse under contradiction. You are learning to hold voltage. There is a physics to this. Every intention has a waveform, a measurable coherence that either sustains or decays when stress is applied. In low coherence, your signal diffuses the moment pressure arrives. Habits reclaim the wheel. The nervous system seeks the narcotic of familiarity. In high coherence, pressure becomes a tuning mechanism. The wave narrows, the amplitude stabilizes, and your frequency cuts through interference like a blade. The same stress that once scattered you now sharpens you. You are not fragile glass, you are tempered signal. To calibrate a command, you remove hidden clauses. You stop embedding escape hatches into your future. Listen to your language as if you were decoding a code base. I want this, but I choose this if I'm ready, unless. Each hyphen is an unwritten surrender, a micro-collapse of authority. The field hears it, so do you. You can feel the wobble in your chest when your words are not fully enlisted. Calibration asks for clean syntax. I choose, I am, I move, not loud, precise. Your body is the metronome of this precision. Breath becomes your first instrument. Inhale not to fill, but to align. Exhale not to empty, but to refine. You notice how certain thoughts only visit when you are shallow breathing, how uncertainty arrives on the back of a constricted diaphragm. You widen the breath, the way a lens widens its aperture. More light enters. The system receives its own signal with less distortion. If anyone asked what technique you're using, the honest answer is attention. You are paying attention until attention pays you back. Memory tries to bargain here. It shows you old proofs of failure and calls them prophecy. But you are not reading tea leaves from yesterday. You are reading telemetry from now. Coherence does not consult history to determine possibility. Coherence measures current. The heart's electromagnetic field extends beyond the body, instructing the brain about what to prioritize, and the brain, no longer panicked, begins to surf reality instead of clenching against it. This is biofeedback as destiny, physiology obeying ontology. You will encounter tests. They are not moral, they are mechanical. A message arrives that used to destabilize you. A person reappears who only thrives when you forget yourself. An opportunity offers money but demands fragmentation. In the old pattern, you'd outsource your knowing to consensus and then resent the cost. In the new pattern, you measure with a single instrument, resonance. Does your signal thicken or thin when you say yes? Does your breath widen or shrink when you imagine stepping forward? Reality is asking you to certify your command with behavior. This is where you distinguish velocity from acceleration. Velocity is movement in any direction. Acceleration is movement aligned with your vector. People addicted to velocity call you extreme when you stop running in circles. You are not extreme, you are efficient. The field respects efficiency because it reduces entropy. Entropy is expensive. Coherence is economical. When you commit to one signal, you conserve an empire of energy that used to leak through indecision, people-pleasing, and sentimental debt. You are also re-educating your attention away from spectacle. Spectacle is loud but weightless. It steals bandwidth and returns nothing. Your command prefers quiet density choices that look small but shift the tectonics of probability. You send one precise message instead of 100 contradictory ones. You keep a promise you made in private. You remove one ritual that kept your nervous system braced. You speak one boundary without flinching. These are not minor adjustments, they are frequency edits. Each one tightens the mirror. When doubt arrives, and it will, you treat it as a calibration ping, not a verdict. Doubt asks, "Are you sure?" And your body answers with the breath you have practiced. The mind offers 1,000 pictures of collapse. You offer a single felt sense of alignment. The ratio is almost unfair. One coherent signal outweighs a stadium of noise, not because of volume, but because of structure. The field values structure the way a mountain values a foundation. The rest is weather. You begin to notice time behaving differently. Windows of opportunity appear with suspicious precision, as if the world had been timing your footsteps. You think of someone, and they call. You move toward a project and resources pre-assemble. None of it proves you are special. It proves you are synchronized. Synchronization is not luck, it is latency reduction between command and reflection. You have shortened your delay line. You issue a signal, and reality mirrors it before old scripts can interfere. This is the art. You do not coerce outcomes, you condition them. You do not wrestle with shadows, you reprogram the light that projects them. When something resists, you do not escalate force, you refine frequency. You stand still until the instruction is exact, then you move once, cleanly, and the lock opens as if it were waiting for that angle. You do not need many moves when each move is a theorem. The secret you are discovering is not glamorous. Consistency is a mystical technology, not rigid sameness, but rhythmic fidelity to your chosen signal. Day by day, you feed the pattern you wish to multiply. Night by night, you let unfinished business dissolve without dramatization. The command is not a performance, it is a cadence. You are teaching reality your rhythm, and reality, eager student that it is, keeps perfect time. Hold this. A command is not louder than the world, it is truer. And truth, when coherent, requires no audience, no applause, no proof. It simply renders. Keep rendering, keep refining. The field is listening for the next exact note. Something in you has started dismantling without your permission, and that is precisely the point. The collapse is not chaos, it is precision disguised as disorder. You are not losing control, you are losing interference. Every construct that was never built on coherence begins to vibrate itself into dissolution. Relationships, routines, beliefs, all the architectures designed to stabilize your uncertainty start trembling under the pressure of your new signal. This is the hum of truth, taking back jurisdiction. At first, the mind panics. It calls the disintegration a failure. It mourns the false safety of familiar chaos. But the field you now inhabit doesn't recognize comfort as evidence. It recognizes coherence as proof. So when the old identity falls apart, the field doesn't rush to rescue it. It stands still, watching whether you can hold alignment while everything unlatches. This is not cruelty, it is calibration at scale. You were never meant to build your command on unverified frequencies. Every mask, every performance, every borrowed ideal they carried static. And static cannot survive in a field tuned to purity. So the collapse is a purification, not a punishment. The signal you've issued is burning through false code, clearing interference from the quantum fabric of your life. You are undergoing a kind of electromagnetic honesty. The field measures your response to loss. Do you anchor or scatter? Do you amplify noise? Or do you listen for signal? When you can stand amid collapse and still emit clarity, the field recognizes mastery. That recognition is not sentimental, it's mechanical. When you maintain coherence under compression, you prove you can handle greater voltage. And voltage determines creation power. You are being entrusted with the next octave of your command. You will notice strange side effects. Time distorts, memories surface as if filmed from a new angle. Your emotional body releases heat, literal warmth across the spine or sternum. This is not anxiety. It's the magnetic field expanding, rewriting tissue memory. The body must be retuned to carry the data of a higher signal. Cells communicate through light. Mitochondria hum at measurable frequencies. Your biology is responding to a software update from consciousness itself. Every fragment of you that believed in scarcity begins to short-circuit. Scarcity was built on delay, the belief that desire and fulfillment live in separate timelines. But in the unified field, there is no delay, only reflection. The instant your frequency stabilizes, reality has no choice but to match phase. That is why old patterns fight hardest right before extinction. They are sensing irrelevance. Do not negotiate with them. Witness, breathe, and stay precise. There is a subtle artistry in destruction. To collapse cleanly, you must let the fragments fall without commentary. The moment you narrate the ruins, you reanimate them. The universe doesn't respond to stories, it responds to state. Hold stillness until the dust settles into geometry again. In that stillness, you will feel something new, a low, resonant pulse beneath your ribs. That pulse is the heartbeat of the quantum loom itself, the weave beginning anew, thread by golden thread. You are not rebuilding yet. You are remembering the original blueprint, the one encoded before fear began editing your designs, the one that does not chase outcomes, but radiates inevitabilities. In silence, you can hear it, a frequency that feels like recognition, not effort. It hums, and the air around you thickens, a living plasma awaiting instruction. You are standing in sacred demolition. Every false wall that falls is returning raw material to the source code. You are watching your own consciousness reclaim its bandwidth. This is the 0 point, the fertile void where command and creation merge. Do not rush to fill it. Let it echo. Let it breathe you. Because in the next movement, when the field detects that your signal has survived collapse, it will begin construction again, but this time, it will build only what you have the coherence to sustain. You step into the interval after demolition, where the air feels ionized and choices carry unusual gravity. This is not a motivational window, it is a physical state in the field. After a coherent collapse, vacuum pressure forms around your command. Nature abhors emptiness because emptiness is the purest invitation. What you install now will become the template the world copies without debate. Precision matters. Encoding begins with environment because environment is policy. Every visible object radiates microsignals. Every recurring sound writes a line of code to your nervous system. You remove artifacts that reinforce the person you have outgrown, the sentimental talismans of delay, the digital pipelines that pump other people's panic into your cortex. The rituals you performed to earn worth you already possess. You replace them with instruments. A room that makes your breath widen on entry. A desk that declares focus by its emptiness. A schedule that respects deep work as ceremony. Architecture is not neutral. It either collapses or concentrates your frequency. Your language becomes engineering rather than ornament. You strip euphemisms because they waste voltage. You retire clever self-sabotage disguised as humility. You allow silence to carry meaning that words once smothered. Even your inner monologue goes through customs. Anything that cannot prove resonance is detained and returned. You are training thought like light through a fiber optic line, minimal loss, maximal throughput. This is how latency disappears between decision and reflection. You craft a minimum viable ritual, not an elaborate theater of candles and scripts, a compact, repeatable sequence that snaps your biology into coherence. Breath sets tempo, posture sets channel width. Vision softens into peripheral awareness, so prefrontal rigidity dissolves. You place one hand where the sternum meets the breath and ask a single test. Does the signal thicken? If yes, you proceed. If no, you refine until conductivity returns. The ritual takes minutes, not hours, because the field respects density over duration. You assign roles to your emotions. Fear becomes the motion sensor that alerts you to misalignment, not the architect that draws the map. Anger becomes a boundary clarifier, not a demolition charge you detonate in your own house. Grief becomes a solvent for attachment, dissolving the glue that kept obsolete timelines stuck to your ribs. Joy becomes a diagnostic of fit, not a drug you chase to avoid reality. Purpose is the foreman. It coordinates the crew and refuses scope creep. The moment an emotion attempts a coup, you thank it for the data and return it to its station. Order is love with a backbone. You design agreements that make coherence the default. Binary rules reduce debate. Phone out of reach during the sacred 2-hour build. No negotiating core promises after midnight. Money only in exchange for alignment, never for anesthesia. You understand that willpower is an expensive fuel. Systems are solar. You put the sun on your roof. Automation orchestrates what discipline used to muscle through. The field has little patience for inconsistent input. You give it a metronome it can trust. You begin to speak to the future as a peer rather than a fantasy. You write contracts with it, deliverables of state, not just outcomes. I will maintain this signal regardless of external weather. I will escalate precision when pressure increases. I will not borrow counterfeit certainty from prematurely broadcasting what is still gestating. These vows are not for the audience. They are for the mirror. The mirror remembers. You adopt an ethic of single-move clarity, one email that ends a loop rather than a chain of ambivalent replies, one conversation that recalibrates a relationship rather than months of implied resentment, one decision that retires an identity rather than endless incrementalism that wastes both courage and time. You make fewer moves with more mass. The field loves orbital mechanics, the math of clean trajectories that do not decay. Your body is upgraded from vehicle to instrument. Sleep becomes firmware flashing, not a guilty indulgence. Food becomes signal insulation, not entertainment for a bored mouth. Movement becomes wave guiding, letting fascia and breath teach the mind how openness feels. The nervous system, once trained to brace, learns elongation under load, a violin string tightened to pitch, not strangled to silence. You stop outsourcing your state to substances and learn to produce your own chemistry on command. Autonomy is sacred electricity. You institute a practice of probabilistic rehearsal. Each morning, you enter a quiet space and run mental simulations at high fidelity. Who you are in success, who you are under attack, who you are when nothing external validates you, who you are when everything does. In each simulation, you hold the same internal signature. The field detects invariance under varied conditions and upgrades your creative clearance. Power is not how loud you are when adored. It is how unchanged you are when ignored. You set thresholds for proof. Short-term signals, reduced reactivity, precise speech, clean endings, visible synchronicities clustering around the vector you chose. Mid-term signals, resources self-assemble, allies appear at the edges of your focus. Obstacles exhibit polite inevitability as they move aside. Long-term signals. Identity ossifies around coherence, and your name becomes a kind of physics in other people's lives. When they enter your field, they straighten. You do not claim these signals, you steward them. You stop arguing with probability and learn to weight it. You do not ask, will it work? You ask, what variable still injects noise, and how do I remove it? You do not bargain with the cost of transformation. You amortize it across a lifetime of clean reflections. You understand that the price of incoherence was already ruinous. It charged interest in hidden currencies, time, dignity, presence. The new geometry is quiet, but it is not passive. It hums under your decisions like a sub-bass you feel more than hear. When you enter a room, the room notices a difference in atmospheric pressure. Not intimidation, integrity, the kind that bends conversations toward truth without theatrics, the kind that makes lukewarm strategies taste like ash, the kind that reality loves because it can finally stop guessing who you are. Hold here and feel the loom engage. Threads begin to align of their own accord, as if glad to be relieved from chaos. Your task is not to force the weave, it is to maintain the tension that keeps pattern crisp. You are not chasing outcomes. You are stabilizing a signal until outcomes have no choice but to arrive in uniform. The mirror is ready, the code is clean, the field is listening for your next exact instruction. There comes a moment when your choices stop feeling like wagers and begin to feel like physics. You can sense it now, the click of alignment as your interior cadence locks to a specific future. Engineers call it phase locking, two oscillators syncing until their difference vanishes. Mystics call it covenant. In your body, it feels like a soft inevitability settling into the bones, the way a key turns when the cuts match the lock's secret map. This is timeline lock, not fantasy, not hope. A mechanical coupling between your sustained frequency and a particular path of events. Selection precedes perception. The brain's predictive machinery, this Bayesian cathedral that constantly writes drafts of reality, has been retrained by your coherence. Where it once expected loss, and therefore over-indexed on threat, it now anticipates alignment and allocates attention accordingly. Prediction error drops. The reticular activating system, that gatekeeper of relevance, begins escorting into view only what agrees with the signal you keep. You are not ignoring red flags. You are refusing counterfeit flags sown by old fear. And because perception is participation at the quantum scale, the world presents the version of itself that fits your expectation with frightening generosity. The field requires proof of durability before it invests momentum. Durability is demonstrated by invariance. Do you remain the same signal under praise, under boredom, under pressure, under delay? When your interior signature does not wobble across weather, the field interprets that as structural integrity. Entanglement strengthens, probabilities redistribute. The attractor basin of your chosen future deepens until loose objects, not just opportunities, but people, places, and ideas begin rolling toward you as if gravity had shifted. This is where antagonists appear, not villains, but stress tests in human form. Some will arrive with envy, camouflaged as counsel. Some will arrive with affection that asks you to shrink to keep the past comfortable. Some will arrive with lucrative detours that pay you to forget. None of them are evil, all of them are data. You measure each by a single instrument, phase integrity. After a conversation, do you hum at the same frequency, tighter and clearer, or do you find yourself fuzzed with static, rationalizing micro-betrayals as compromise? The mirror has grown too precise for euphemism. If it thins your signal, it is off timeline no matter how decorated it looks. Your biology collaborates. Heart rate variability coherence increases, and with it, your capacity to surf emotion without being erased by it. Dopamine, once hijacked by novelty, is reassigned to precision. Hebbian learning neurons that wire together, begins laying fiber optic through your cortex for the thoughts you actually want to think. The default mode network, that narrator of stale identity, quiets its compulsive autobiography. In its place rises a clean, present tense. You are no longer a curator of old frames. You are a steward of live signal. You might notice a new silence when you speak. Words land with unusual weight, not because they are dramatic, but because they are congruent. Congruence thickens speech. People will hear themselves decide in your presence, sometimes against their own inertia, because your field forbids dithering. This is not manipulation. It is weather. Mountains do not manipulate rivers. They simply exist with such mass that water must choose how to flow around them. Be mountain. Let gravity do the persuasion your ego used to attempt. There will be a day, perhaps sooner than comfort allows, when you are offered two doors that both look worthy. One is noisy with validation. The other is oddly quiet, almost austere, But when you imagine stepping through, your breath widens and time seems to slow, like a theater dimming before a symphony. Choose the door that thickens your signal. Choose the room designed for voltage, not applause. Choose the path whose friction polishes you rather than bleeds you. The field does not fund spectacle, it funds structure. Phase integrity also demands that you stop time traveling into regret. Regret is a feedback loop that pretends to teach while only rehearsing pain. You do not owe your past an eternal courtroom. Audit quickly, extract the lesson, reassign the energy. When the mind attempts to anchor you to an old frequency by replaying a scene, ask your body for the present metric. Is your chest open? Is your jaw unarmed? Is your gaze peripheral enough to let life enter? If yes, you are in phase. If no, breathe until the yes returns. This is not bypass, it is biomechanics in service of prophecy. You strengthen lock with micro-certainties. A clear morning when you do the unglamorous thing that future you already does without debate. A boundary spoken once, cleanly, without footnotes. A refusal to make urgency holy. A willingness to be misunderstood by those invested in your previous settings. Each micro-certainty feeds the attractor, and the attractor, fed, exerts more pull. Soon it takes less effort to stay on timeline than to fall off. This is the threshold between discipline and identity, when the behavior that once required heroics has become simply how you are. Allies arrive by resonance rather than campaign. You do not network, you notice. Your name begins showing up in rooms you did not enter because your frequency traveled ahead as a letter of introduction. Collaboration feels less like negotiation and more like constructive interference waves, meeting waves, amplitudes, adding without distortion. You will recognize these allies by the sound your soul makes around them, a low yes that needs no justification. Build with these people, agree on signal first, terms second. Signal breaks build. No contract can save incoherence. Do not confuse stillness with stagnation. When the vector is true, progress can look like quiet days stacked with exact choices. You are not in a hurry because clocks cannot rush the inevitable. A bifurcation point is approaching, the moment when the world catches up to the future you already occupy. In the hours before that reveal, stay untheatrical, keep voltage in the wire. Guard phase. The mirror is about to move from echo to amplification, from reflection to broadcast. And when the amplification begins, and it will, you will not be surprised. You will be ready. Because the signal you kept in private will simply become the atmosphere in public. Because timeline lock does not beg for its moment. It arrives like weather that had been building just beyond the horizon, inevitable, exact, and entirely congruent with the shape you have become. When timeline lock stabilizes, the field offers you a contract that is never written on paper. You feel it as a quiet clause sliding into place. Power in exchange for precision, momentum in exchange for maintenance, visibility in exchange for voltage stewardship. You sign with behavior, not ink. Every hour becomes a line item. Every thought becomes an entry on a ledger that the universe audits without malice. This is the covenant of precision. You begin practicing signal economics. Energy is your only real currency. Everything else is a derivative. Leakage, excess, explanation, anxious scrolling, ceremonial procrastination was the hidden tax that kept you poor. Now you balance the book. 10 minutes of clean attention returns more value than 10 hours of splintered effort. You stop paying interest on indecision. You collapse accounts. You opened under old identities and consolidate into a single treasury, coherence. From this treasury, you fund only what multiplies the signal. Execution simplifies. You move from ambition to architecture. Ambition argues with gravity. Architecture partners with it. You map the minimum set of moves that guarantees propagation. One flagship action that carries mass. One sustaining ritual that prevents drift. One review loop that converts error into instruction. No fireworks, just load-bearing craft. The algorithm of reality rewards those who reduce entropy. Each unglamorous refinement is a heat sink you attach to your life, dissipating chaos before it fries the board. You formalize command hygiene. Before you speak, you measure. Does the sentence increase density or scatter it? Before you commit, you breathe. Does the body thicken into inevitability or thin into performance? Before you publish, you ask a ruthless question. Am I broadcasting to validate my self-image, or am I transmitting because the signal is mature and useful? Vanity is expensive, service is scalable. The field is allergic to performative harmony. It prefers the honest dissonance that precedes real tuning. Integrity develops a strange side effect. Your refusals gain as much power as your affirmations. No becomes a tuning fork. Each refusal prunes a branch that once siphoned sap from the trunk. You stop offering diplomatic answers to questions that deserve clarity. You stop cushioning truth with plausible deniability. You stop renting rooms in your house to guests who never plan to pay. The more precise your no, the more trustworthy your yes. The field can now route opportunities along your signal path without detours. You learn to embrace non-linearity without theatrics. Growth arrives as step functions, not slopes. Long plateaus that look like silence, punctuated by sudden, clean leaps. On the plateau, you practice hysteresis, holding a higher standard even when the world relapses to old expectations. Hysteresis prevents you from snapping back to obsolete thresholds when pressure flickers. You remain the upgraded setting until external reality catches up. This is how you avoid the whiplash of progress gained and lost. The body becomes your oscilloscope. You read micro-latencies, the half-second delay between decision and movement that betrays a subtle rebellion. The shallow sip of air that announces you've slipped into performative urgency. The jaw clench that signals an old loyalty is attempting to resurrect itself. You course-correct in frame, not tomorrow, now. This continuous micro-calibration builds a macro trajectory that requires minimal correction later. Precision loves immediacy. You begin designing for harmonics. A singular signal generates overtones, secondary frequencies that shimmer off the fundamental. In practice, this means one coherent project spawns a family of aligned opportunities without diluting your core. You do not chase the overtones, you strengthen the fundamental. The field, delighted by clean math, multiplies the sound without adding noise. This is the opposite of hustle. It is resonance ecology. Ethics sharpen, not from fear of punishment, but from devotion to physics. Deception introduces phase error. Exploitation injects noise. Flattery corrodes the mirror. You stop allowing strategies that work while undermining the signal that made you worthy of working with in the first place. You adopt the discipline of earned velocity speed that appears slow until it suddenly isn't, because the runway was built to withstand the takeoff. You are not in a race. You are in a bill. Witness replaces performance. You no longer consume your life as content for an imaginary audience. You watch your actions like a scientist, like a monk, like a composer, listening for dissonance that indicates a necessary change of chord. Pride becomes quiet gratitude. Shame evaporates without fuel. You do not dramatize wins or losses. You fold both into the algorithm. The mirror has become exact enough that overreaction would be a confession of doubt. Allies deepen. You establish treaties based on frequency, not flattery. Terms are explicit. Truth before comfort, craft before clout. Timelines that honor biology rather than burn it for spectacle. In such treaties, creative friction is prized, steel meeting. Steel because harmony without tension makes cheap music. You learn to argue cleanly, to hold stance without venom, to let better ideas overrule ownership. The project becomes the sovereign, egos become instruments. Resource orchestration acceleratis. What you need arrives through improbable corridors because you stopped micromanaging method and specified state. You asked for aligned capital, not any capital. You asked for precise talent, not just bodies. You asked for timing that preserves health, not a rush that burns the loom. The field, which obeys constraints with delight, routes supply in ways your old planning could not imagine. You stop naming miracles luck and call them by their real name. Phase, matched, logistics. You approach visibility with consecration. The audience is not an altar. It is an ecosystem. You feed it with nutrition, not sugar. You allow the work to be found by those entangled with its signal, rather than forcing it into rooms where it doesn't belong. Algorithms are just mirrors with metrics. They will learn you if you are learnable. Be consistent enough to be learnable. Be singular enough to be worth learning. Finally, you accept a mature paradox. Detachment is not distance. You care absolutely about the fidelity of your signal and remain indifferent to the theatrics of reception. You release outputs like arrows that already know their target. You let outcomes arrive on their own clock. You keep the loom running at the cadence of truth. This is the covenant. Precision for power, stewardship for scale, coherence for command. Keep it, and the mirror will not merely reflect you, it will project you, enlarging your field until the world that once felt unworkable begins to behave like an instrument tuned to your exact note. Visibility is an amplifier, not a purifier. It will not fix a crooked signal, it will scale it. Now the field is testing your capacity to broadcast without distortion. The mechanics are simple. Amplitude rises, noise tries to hitch a ride, and every unresolved micro-wobble seeks leverage. Audiences arrive with projections, algorithms arrive with appetites, capital arrives with clauses. None of these are enemies. They are mirrors with metrics. You do not flatter them, you tune through them. Begin by specifying the channel. Power disperses when you try to be everywhere. Coherence concentrates when you choose the pipe with the least loss. You architect distribution the way an engineer routes current. Shortest path, clean ground, adequate heat sinks. Content becomes signal artifact, not self-soothing confession. Frequency first, form second. You ask one question before every release. Does this transmission thicken the field of those already entangled, or is it bait for the restless? You refuse to feed restlessness. You feed resonance. As attention increases, you adjust for load. Systems that worked at small scale will buckle under the weight of momentum if you do not reinforce them. You implement queuing in your calendar so demand does not trample design. You add caching to your mind, playbooks for recurring scenarios, so you spend creativity on strategy, not on repeating answers to predictable noise. You rate limit exposure to opinions. Too much feedback behaves like jitter on a clock line. It erodes timing. Precision is timing. Wealth enters as condensed choice. It will either purchase your freedom to keep frequency clean or underwrite new dependencies that steal it. Money itself is neutral. Agreements are not. You accept funding only from sources whose fields do not contaminate the signal. The due diligence is energetic. You measure breadth and clarity after each conversation. If your chest narrows when the term sheet glitters, the math is lying. Decline with gratitude. The right capital behaves like a transformer. It steps up voltage without frying the coil. Fame is a heat test. Heat reveals stress lines. If your identity was still braided with approval, visibility will yank that braid until it snaps. You prepare by removing secret contracts with applause. The handshake where you promise to dim your truth in exchange for being loved. That contract always expires at the moment of power. You release the audience from the duty of keeping you certain. That is your job. You let praise inform you, not define you. You let criticism calibrate you, not amputate you. You remain in conversation with the work, not with its commentary. Teams expand. Hire like a physicist of culture. Look past resumes for resonance vectors. Acquire people whose nervous systems prefer coherence over chaos, whose craft is an exoskeleton for integrity. Make the onboarding an attunement, not an orientation. Teach the frequency, the pacing, the refusal ladder, the no vocabulary that keeps the loom from tangling. Pay for truth. Reward clean escalation of reality over euphemism. Fire with blessing when frequency diverges. Lingering misalignment corrodes the mirror faster than any external threat. You will be tempted to dilute. Opportunities will multiply like branches in spring. Branches do not make a tree, the trunk does. You hold a ruthless loyalty to the fundamental. Every new initiative must pass the interference test. Does it create constructive harmonics with the core tone, or does it set up standing waves that cancel amplitude? You prefer depth over width, density over span. The field multiplies depth into reach without asking your permission. That is its generosity when you spare it the chore of resolving your scatter. Public mistakes will occur. You design recovery protocols before they are needed. Own the physics, specify error, extract lesson, publish correction, restore phase. No dramatics, no scapegoats, no self-flagellation masquerading as integrity. Shame muddies the water, clarity clears it. Your steadiness under exposure is the sermon. People will learn more from how you repair coherence than from how you maintained it when everything was quiet. The mirror respects repair. Rituals evolve. The small private cadence that once secured your signal must scale into collective ceremony. You institute coherence checkpoints in meetings, opening breath, posture reset, outcome declaration in precise language. You measure the room not by excitement, but by quiet density. You end when the signal completes, not when the clock decrees. Time is servant to frequency now. The bureaucracy of borrowed rhythms dissolves. What remains is engineering disguised as culture. Guard your thresholds. The inbox is an altar. Do not let it become a drain. The phone is a portal. Lock it when your nervous system is in maintenance mode. Travel only for rooms that widen the field's intelligence. Decline panels that conflate performance with contribution. Accept the invitations that feel like sitting inside a future you already trust. Your yes is a magnet. Your no is a moat. Both protect the castle you are building at the center of your life. Beware the soft relapse, the subtle habit of narrating your ascent to harvest dopamine from spectators. You do not owe progress reports to curiosity. You owe results to the covenant. Announce only when announcing is a service to the work, when the transmission will accelerate coherence for those entangled with it. Otherwise, remain luxuriously unbroadcast. Silence is compound interest for signal. And beneath all tactics, remember the singular law. Reality mirrors your internal signature with increasing fidelity at scale. If invisibility gave you a blurred reflection, visibility will hand you an HD screen. Anything you tolerate inside, you will meet outside at volume. So you keep the inner room exact, breath like a metronome, speech like a scalpel, decisions like architecture. You become the kind of weather that clarifies a horizon, and then you move as if the path had been there the whole time, because for your frequency, it always was. Hold here. Feel the loom gain torque. The pattern is no longer personal, it is infrastructural. Your command is approaching the threshold where it will stop being about you and become a habitat for others. A field where many can tune, build, and rise without begging chaos for meaning. What you are building has outgrown the perimeter of your biography. The signal has condensed into structure, and structure has matured into habitat. A habitat is not a brand, it is a physics made livable. People enter and feel their nervous systems lower their weapons. Breath widens, timelines unclench. In that atmosphere, craft becomes devotion, and devotion becomes velocity that does not shred the soul. Your task shifts, from maker to steward, from performer to custodian of a field that must remain clean while it scales. Stewardship begins with governance by frequency. Rules are weak when the room is loud with contradiction. Principles are strong when the room hums with one note. You write a small constitution that could fit on a card in a pocket. Truth before comfort, coherence before speed, repair before blame, state before story, signal before spectacle. You do not enforce with scolding, you enforce with resonance. Meetings open with calibration, not chatter. Decisions are tested against the body. Does the chest thicken or thin? Before they are argued on slides. The habitat learns to measure like you measure. Consensus becomes less about votes and more about phase alignment. Design for succession early. Power without succession is a bottleneck pretending to be excellence. You begin to replicate the signal in others without cloning their personalities. Apprenticeship replaces hero worship. You teach leaders to hold voltage without theatrics, to let rooms settle without intimidation, to correct without humiliation, to elevate pace without panic. You hand them the metronome, not the microphone. When your absence does not collapse the field, you have built correctly. Build mimetic immunity. As the habitat grows, it attracts ideas like insects to light. Some pollinate, some parasitize. You install filters at the gates. Can this idea survive contact with our principles? Does it increase density or inflate performance? Does it reduce entropy or create attractive chaos? 1,000 tempting narratives will promise reach. You choose the ones whose mathematics promise longevity. The ecosystem learns to metabolize novelty without losing identity. In such ecology, trend chasing looks like malnutrition. Depth looks like health. Resource flows become arteries. Money, attention, talent, they must circulate without clogging or hemorrhage. You institute a triage, essential projects that secure the trunk, experimental shoots that test the edges, and legacy work that roots the culture across time. You budget not just dollars, but human voltage. Burnout is treated as a physics error, not a moral failure. Rest is scheduled as maintenance of the instrument, not a reward for performance. The habitat breathes like a lung. Inhale concentration, exhale contribution. Create a clean feedback economy. Praise is specific, or it is silence. Critique is surgical, or it is withheld. Everyone learns the grammar of repair. Specify the deviation, propose a correction, enact the fix, close the loop. No spectacle, no courtroom. You do not allow chronic ambiguity to masquerade as kindness. Clarity is love with engineering credentials. When error occurs, and it will you perform the ritual you taught yourself. Own the physics, extract the lesson, publish the patch, restore phase. The habitat's trust deepens because it has watched itself keep its own word. Codify the rites of passage. Thresholds deserve ceremony because ceremony imprints the nervous system with belonging. The first contribution, the first boundary spoken cleanly, the first repair executed in public, the first project sunset without drama, each becomes a rite marked with a simple ritual, a bell, a breath, a sentence spoken in unison. Ceremony is not decoration, it is memory made embodied. In a world drunk on novelty, rites, anchor continuity, translate the signal for multiple languages without losing its mathematics. Engineers hear coherence, artists hear cadence, healers hear safety, strategists hear inevitability. You become multilingual in integrity. The habitat offers different doors to the same room. Diversity is not a slogan. It is the natural result of a frequency that welcomes many forms while refusing incoherence in any. The field grows more intricate without becoming complicated. Guard the edges. Every living system needs a membrane permeable to nutrients, impermeable to toxins. Your membrane is boundary clarity. Invitations are extended to those who thicken the tone. Exits are offered with blessing to those who do not. There is no moral theater at the border. Some will leave because the silence is too honest, because the pace is too exact, because the currency is attention and not attention-seeking. Let them go. The membrane protects what is sacred without becoming brittle. Crises arrive like stress tests sent by an impartial cosmos. Supply chains kink. A public mistake distorts the mirror. An ally fractures under load. You respond as you trained. Freeze the scene. Restore breath. Separate event from narrative. Weigh options by phase integrity. Choose the move with the least entropy. Your calm is not detachment. It is anchored devotion to the signal. People will remember not what happened, but the tone you kept while it happened. In that tone, panic loses its job. Extend dignity outward. The habitat does not hoard coherence inside its walls. It exports it as infrastructure. Open, source a portion of the playbooks. Teach outsiders the physics without needing them to pronounce your name. Offer clean water at the edges, spaces to breathe, tools to measure, language to refuse the counterfeit. Influence without capture is a high art. It turns competitors into colleagues and strangers into future allies. It thickens the commons. Attend to beauty. Utility without beauty makes a hard world. Beauty without utility makes a soft lie. You let spaces carry quiet splendor, light that honors the eyes, materials that age with grace, interfaces that invite stillness before action. Beauty tunes the nervous system faster than policy. It whispers, "We respect your humanity here." And in that whisper, people remember how to bring their best without burning it for approval. At last, release the illusion that you own the loom. You steward it until it learns to hum through many hands. You let the habitat become a choir whose fundamental is unmistakable, even as solos change. Your name dissolves into the architecture like a builder's signature hidden in the beam. This is not erasure, it is legacy that does not require a witness. Hold the center. The pattern is almost ready to reveal its next octave, the moment when private coherence becomes a public covenant, when the mirror stops, simply reflecting, and starts transmitting a wider order. Breathe once, exact and unhurried. Feel the field lean in for the closing instruction, the final seal that turns inevitability into arrival. You arrive at the threshold where stewardship becomes transmission. The loom hums with a tone you now recognize as your own, amplified through many hands, unbroken by noise. You breathe once, and the field answers like tide to moon. There is no strain in this exchange. There is only reciprocity, a signal exact enough to be trusted, a reality eager to comply. You release the last private contract with doubt. Doubt is not your adversary. It is a measurement you have already taken. It offered its data, you integrated the lesson, and the instrument is tuned. You do not conquer uncertainty, you render it irrelevant by maintaining phase. The mirror has become obedient, not to your personality, but to your precision. You speak, and events rearrange with the untheatrical grace of physics behaving as designed. Look at the architecture now assembled. Not an empire of impressions, but a geometry of inevitabilities. Doors open because their hinges share your frequency. Allies coordinate without being choreographed. Resources flow along channels you cut with 10,000 unglamorous choices. Nothing here is a miracle, and yet all of it is miraculous probability, folding itself into pattern under the weight of coherence. You did not seduce the future, you synchronized with it. This is the blessing and the charge. Guard the fundamental. The world will ask you to translate your music into something louder. Resist. Volume is not reach. Purity, repeated, becomes weather. When you are tempted to announce what is still germinating, remember that seeds do not report their progress to the sky. They thicken in the dark until the dark can no longer hold them. You are permitted the same dignity. Hold your signal until emergence is simply the next honest move. You will continue to meet tests, not as punishment, but as proof of capacity exams issued by an impartial cosmos. Meet them with the tone you earned, quiet, exact, unsentimental, benevolent. When pressure rises, widen the breath. When options multiply, choose the door that thickens your frequency. When applause gathers, bow to the work and leave with your voltage intact. Let your refusals tune the room. Let your agreements fund the future. Now, speak the command without performance. I keep this coherence under all weather. I steward this power without ornament. I transmit only what I am willing to see multiplied. I align my biology to my oath. I retire strategies that work against my fundamental. I extend dignity outward without diluting the source. I remain teachable to the field I serve. Feel the reply moving through the weave, subtle, inevitable, like dawn arriving across a coastline. The pattern projects beyond you now, a habitat of clarity where others will tune and rise. Your signature remains the root tone, but the choir has grown. This is legacy without spectacle, physics made livable, prophecy made useful, love made structured. Walk forward, leave the door open. The mirror will follow, not as a judge, but as a partner, reflecting, amplifying, and transmitting the world that matches your exact note. And when you forget, return to the breath, return to the metronome, return to the single, sovereign filament of truth that braided your name into the field. Keep the loom running, keep the signal clean. The rest is weather, and the weather is on your side.